All right, welcome to the October OCRA meeting. I guess we can start with check-ins on Boyd, KO4GJO. Here we go, Paul.
I'm Paul, N2XZF from Butner.
Pat, KO4QLU, Durham.
Charlie, NC4CD, Durham.
Mike, KN4ZHP, Chatham County.
Dan, KR4UB.
Hi, it's Steve, KZ1X in Chapel Hill.
Brad, WZ4BSS, Hillsborough.
Sam, KJ4VWG, Durham.
This is Ron, KO4RON, Pittsburgh.
Chip, KF4WBK, Chapel Hill.
Dave, K4DJW, Rosemont.
Laurie, N1YXU, and I've also got some check-ins on Zoom. We have Fred, KN4QBZ, Ed, KU4GOZ, Jose, KD4JWF, Bob, W4FK, Charles, KY4HU, JR, N4JQR, Jeremy, N1QTN, and I did not write down, I got the call. Call sign is KW4EE. We'll come back to that person's name in a second. Sorry about that. Kevin, and then Ken, KO4DHJ.
Okay, I'm the cameraman too. I'm Bruce, N1LN, Chapel Hill.
Wilson, W4BOH, Hillsborough.
All right, thank you all. Opening comments. I got an interesting letter in the mail. That says, "Dear Boyd, KO4GJO, as part of the periodic OCRA database maintenance cycle, we've noticed that your membership has lapsed. We hope you've enjoyed your membership and that you find value in it. If your membership renewal has slipped your mind, we encourage you to please renew at your earliest convenience. A link is provided below." Well, I got to thinking, if my membership has lapsed, then I can't be the vice president. And if I'm not vice president, then I can't be in charge of the Christmas party. But unfortunately, I already paid my renewal before I thought of that. So you're stuck with me for a little longer. And I was gonna write down the names of a few other people who have a sieve for a memory like I do, but I got that mixed up with some other paperwork that I had printed out for a presentation on how to make your own first aid kit. So the names are with that paperwork, and instead I got this. It says, "A patient almost died in front of me. At first I didn't know what to do, but then I remembered my training and I counted to 10 and put the scissors back in my pocket. They never even knew." So the other announcement I have, going back to the Christmas party, there is a sign-up sheet floating around in the back somewhere. If you're going to be going, get your name on it, how many people are coming, your spouse's name or girlfriend's name or whoever. You don't have to pay tonight, but the sooner we get the important information there so we can figure out how many we have to deal with, the easier it'll be on the board son of a gun that has to be in charge of that. So yeah, it's still $50, yeah, for you. It's going to be on December 9th Same place it was last year. So if you were there last year, you know where to go. And if you weren't, well, good luck. Yes, sir. Okay. Your tip for the day is to go there during the daytime so you know where it is, and it'll be, apparently it's harder to find at night. That about does it for my pre-meeting comments. We can go to Bruce with his presentation. Something about memory, but I forget what the rest was.
Just look in location 6. It'll be right there. Okay, Lori's going to be bringing up the presentation here shortly. And then we can go through it. What you're going to hear tonight is 2 different sections, 2 individual programs. The first one talks about, keep going. The computer's a little slow, perhaps. One more. Okay, well, no, okay, stay there. The first one is about device memory programming. A couple years ago, get away from the speaker, get over on this side. A couple years ago, Dan and I did a presentation about tri-county repeaters, frequencies, primary, secondary, and that we had a lot of work to do before we would be able to come back and talk to you about this particular topic. Since then, this topic has expanded and kind of taken its own life. And I think we owe that a lot to the Chatham County Gang and the Chatham EOC, and particularly the person whose name is on the top of this list, Steve Newton. If you don't know Steve, he's the Director of Emergency Operations for Chatham County. So we got together to do what you're going to hear shortly. And this is the team. Since we talked about a tri-county plan, we have representatives from Durham, Chatham, and Orange. And of course, we also have representatives from the EOC. I won't go through and read all the names. I think they're big enough so you can read them, unlike a few future slides, which won't be big enough to read. But we spent, I don't know, 2-3 hours at the EOC going through a really good discussion that you're going to hear about here shortly. I volunteered to take notes and to send out the result of what we talked about. It's gone through a few different revisions. And then we met again to talk about the second topic you'll hear about tonight. And we pretty much put the finishing touches on it with a few exceptions. And you'll hear about that tonight also. So next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, so what were our objectives? What requirements did we have going into this meeting to try to meet those objectives? What type of considerations did we have when we were trying to meet those objectives? When we get this thing completed, then what are our next steps? And then some sample forms that you will see when we get there. The whole purpose really of this is to be able to have a clear and concise order of repeaters, of simplex frequencies, of PL tones, such that in an emergency, we don't have to try to explain all of this. We can quickly go to memory location 4 or memory location 10, and everybody that chooses to follow the instructions that you'll hear about shortly can easily get there, and there won't be any confusion. Next slide, please. Okay, so the main goal was let's have a single agreed upon list for device memory programming so that Wilson's radio for his UHF and VHF frequencies of repeaters and simplex would be the same as Mike's, would be the same as Steve's, would be the same as Paul's. And if I can figure out how to program mine, will be the same as mine. I'm one of those unfortunate people that don't have any of the cables that you can quickly plug into your computer for programming. And you'll see why that would really be an asset when you see the sheet. So a single agreed upon list for memory programming. If we are fortunate enough to get a lot of you to be able to do this to your equipment, we really want to make sure that this list can allow for changes and additions without the need to reprogram your device memories. Translated, if you get locations 1 through 20 programmed and a new repeater is added, we wanted to make sure that, well, okay, that really should be in location 7. So move everything from 7 down to 20, down 1, plug that one. No, we want to make sure that it is flexible enough so that if we have to add a repeater for any of the counties, and you'll see that when we get to format, that we would not be asking you to make big changes like that. The info on the list should align, really must align. It shouldn't be a word should, must align with the IC 217 and the IC 205 forms. Think about our customer here. I would love to say we have 3 customers. We have 1. Okay, now that customer is Steve Newton. It's also Chatham County. Here we are, the Orange County Repeater Club, right? And our customer is the Chatham County EOC. I would love to say that we have an Orange County EOC customer. Charlie is here from Durham. You know, we'd love to say that we have a Durham County EOC customer. Maybe once they see what we're doing, and really some of us contribute to that. Other ones are really doing all the work, okay? The Chatham County gang, and there's a couple of them here, okay? Mike and Dan goes down to the meetings also. Ron attends the meetings quite regularly. Charlie, I don't think you've been to the meetings other than these particular meetings, but you're just because of your history, you know, you've got quite a reputation down there, a positive reputation, and, you know, very much contributing to that. But we need to make sure that what we're doing aligns with the IC 217 and the 205. Now, the 217 form, you'll see more about that later, but that's really the master inventory, which kind of looks a lot like the sheet that we put together for you to use to program your devices. So it's a superset of all of the frequencies, whether they're simplex, whether they're repeaters, whether they're DMR repeaters, which we'll get to later, okay? So that you'll have a piece of paper or multiple pieces of paper, depending how many it takes and how big you want the lettering, okay, that you can have a master inventory list. The IC 205 is an incident-specific inventory. So if there's an incident going on in location X or county Y or whatever, and there's a need to use some of the equipment, repeaters, simplex frequencies, et cetera, for that specific incident, the information would be taken from the 217 form, and it's in such a format that it can almost be cut and pasted into the 205 form, and so that would be a subset from the superset. That would be a subset that would be used for that specific incident. Now, I'm going to ask a question here. When I start lying, let me know, Mike, Dan, please. You guys are more familiar with this than I am. Okay, so we need to make sure that this list that we're talking about up here in bullet 1 and bullet 2 meets the requirements for IC 217 and 205, which then would meet our customer requirements and would be easy to use during emergency response activities. Okay, so we knew what the objectives were. Well, what do we need? What are the requirements? It certainly would be nice to know all the repeaters. You know, what are the frequencies? What are the PLs? What are the locations? And by locations, it could be this mountain, but it needs to be this county at a minimum. Okay, we also have call signs. So we have a lot of specifics about the repeaters. We need to know the simplex frequencies. Maybe the repeaters don't work and we can use simplex frequencies, and we can relay to, if we're not close enough to talk together, might be able to relay. Special use repeaters. Well, how about the weather, NOAA weather? How about Skywarn? You know, there's other special use repeaters. All-Star. We'll get more about this when we get into linking, but that's the software that is used to link the repeaters that we have linked right now in Chatham and Orange County. And you'll hear about that in the next presentation. But which repeaters are linked, which repeaters could be and will be linked, and which ones are on the table to be considered for a method to be able to link them. And something that I'm an expert here, DMR. DMR code plug information. It's a little more complicated than the analog repeaters with a frequency, an offset and a PL tone. So they're much more complex, but we want to make sure that when we get to the DMR repeaters and you start putting that information into your devices from our list, that all of the necessary information is there. Okay, so there'd be configuration files and channels and frequencies and tones, and there's a lot more to a DMR repeater. But we want to make sure we knew all of that before we actually said, okay, this sheet is finished. Next slide, please. Okay, factors being considered. Well, memories, repeaters by geographic location. So when we're looking at a way to put this information into a list, let's think about it logically. Let's not have them in the order where we have one repeater in Orange, then one in Durham, then one in Alamance, and one in Guilford. Let's group them in subgroups in our master inventory in a logical location, okay, such that it would be potentially grouped by incident. So if we have a Chatham County incident, well, those repeaters might be location 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay. And then the DMR repeaters might be there too, but they wouldn't be 6, 12, 14, 32. We try to group them up front. Allow for legacy equipment programming. So a lot of folks have older radios. I have older radios. We talked about potentially with some of the new radios, instead of picking, instead of having like 10 memory locations assigned to Chatham Orange, and then 10 memory locations assigned to Durham, well, what if we had memory group A, memory group B, memory group C? Well, everybody's radio doesn't have that capability. So to make sure that we get more individuals within the two clubs, and I'm counting Chatham with OCRA because it's kind of a sidekick. So it's really within DFMA right now and within OCRA, we want to make sure that we allow for legacy equipment. So if you happen to have a radio that has memory groups A, B, C, and D, well, you might not need to use them, because in memory group A, if you have enough locations, and I don't know what the specifics are on each radio, but my radios all have more than 200 memory channels. So that's plenty without using any kind of memory groups. Okay, this kind of repeats the first one, but look at the inventory from a use case perspective. Try to group the repeaters and by geography or the way the incidents might come about. Okay. Add additional counties as appropriate. Wake. So we're looking at the tri-county report that we put together was Chatham, Orange, and Durham. But we also have individuals and requirements with Wake, Alamance, Guilford, Harnett. Okay, so we've got repeaters listed on our chart, on our memory location from those counties, because they are members, some people are members from those counties within our clubs. We share resources between those counties. It would be wise for us to incorporate their memories, frequencies, repeaters in with our master list, because then we do it once. And simplex. Simplex is a must, because as I said, repeaters may be down. We might want to use simplex. There was a suggestion made. Could the frequencies for simplex be standardized across multiple counties? That's an open item, but it sure would be nice, because the last thing you want to have to do is program your radio when you get someplace in 5 seconds to add another simplex frequency. But you'll see what we've incorporated, and we've pretty much covered that. And also, if you want to, you can use tones for private, for squelch activated tones on simplex. If there's any questions at any time, either on Zoom or in the room, please raise your hand or speak up. Wilson, hang on.
Did you think about free-forming a network for simplex? Sort of who can hear whom, and have it ready?
That's an excellent question. One that we did not talk about in that way, but I know that Chatham has done some tests, and we have done some in the past, but not recently, where they've done simplex testing. They might meet on a repeater and then try various simplex frequencies from wherever the individuals are and keep track of who can hear whom and how would you relay that. So I don't, Mike, is there more to it than that? Can you, is there, or is that really just how does it work and what can we do? Okay, so it's not a formal net, I guess, if you will, or an infrastructure, but they have done simplex testing just to see who's able to hear whom on simplex from wherever they happen to be. Does that answer or no? Hang on.
Didn't mean it take so long. If you generated a map that everybody had, they would know whom to call when it was time to do something and not say, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
So what I translated that to, if we go back to the Aries days, when we were very active with Orange County, we had a call tree and we knew who could talk to whom and where they were and who had responsibility to talk to this person or that person or how we would do that. You can kind of, if you're really flexible with your defining of what a call tree is, you could almost do the same thing with simplex, where you would have a map, whether it be in alphanumeric representation or actually on a map, where I can hear Boyd on, this simplex frequency. Well, I can't hear Wilson, but, Dan can hear Wilson, but I can hear Dan. So it could kind of be the same thing, I think, if we did that. We did not talk about that, but that's a good suggestion. Okay, eye chart time. For those of you that got my invitation, I said in big letters, please print one of the attached files because you will not be able to read the one in the room. Everybody hold them up that printed them other than these two guys here. All right, so that's horrible. Yeah, can't fix it. All right. So what this is, and I will, actually I have already mailed this out and it's gone out to 2 listings. It's gone out to the OCRA DFMA Groups IO, and Dan has also sent the same documents out to the complete OCRA email address. And I'm not sure who has the DFMA email address now that D has kind of left the building, but hopefully that's been turned over to somebody and we can send the same list out there, because we'd like to either have the DFMA folks watch this YouTube video, or I'd be more than happy to come to the DFMA meeting. We do the same thing. But so what we're looking at here, this is page 1 of the chart of frequencies. And I'll explain what it is, even though I can't even read it and I'm a foot from it. Oh, yeah, that would be great. I will be more than happy. So those of you that did not hear what Lori said, she's going to bring up the PDF file and see if she can blow that up so we can read it, because she has all the files on our computer. Sure. Let me bring the microphone so the Zoomers can hear the question.
You said in the Aries days, is Aries still functional?
Not really. So Aries has morphed to Oxcom from the state perspective, correct? So Aries exists if you're talking to somebody at the ARRL. If you're talking to the state EOC, it's Oxcom.
But that's only if you want to get into EOC. You can still have Aries support amateurs in your community without being in Oxcom.
And who are they going to talk to? I mean, the purpose of ham radio and emergency communications is to respond to organizations that call upon you. Nobody dispatches without the EOC. The Red Cross doesn't auto dispatch. Nobody should dispatch unless they're called upon by the EOC, and the EOC is called upon by the state EOC, and they're all Oxcom. So Aries in 4 letters exists, and you'll still get stuff from the ARRL about Aries, but it's not as broadly standardized as it used to be because Oxcom. True, false? True. Scared me, Mike. So I hear what you're saying, because I mean, Lori and I were very active in Aries in Texas. Okay, pick a hurricane. We were down, where the people were coming in from New Orleans. it absolutely worked, but there's no reason why Oxcom won't work. It's a few letters are changed. Some of the policies and procedures are changed. Okay. And, you know, when we were in Aries, they didn't have a Viper system. So we were the solution. So now we provide assistance to the organizations that have figured out that they really needed to do something on their own. And we provide backup assistance based on what their requirements are, rather than us being able to run a couple of audio nets. So it's kind of different, but it's the same. Hang on.
You know, all these different organizations are good feeder groups for everything. And nowadays, CERT groups are organizing. There are groups who have FRS and GMRS radios. So all these groups, including Aries, we ought to be pulling together and talking together to form the larger group. None of the clubs have enough people who can really activate and deploy for probably our own county. The only way it's going to work is by reaching out to more groups. And I just wanted to add that comment.
Thanks, Dan. And thanks, Lori. While they're trying to fix the camera, let me kind of explain what we've got here. So this is the top of the frequency chart, okay? And one of the things that after we had this frequency chart pretty much done, I think it could have been Steve from the EOC suggested, why don't we leave the top 5, or really it's the first 5 memory locations open for user customization. So maybe you have your favorite repeater that you want in memory location 1, and your second one in 2. Okay, and if you look down this chart, well, you know, maybe your favorite one is 442150, which really, if you do it according to this chart, that would be an 11. Well, put it in 1 also, but have it an 11, because if we're in the middle of an exercise, we're not going to say we're using repeater 1. We'll say we're using repeater 11. Okay, so the first 5 are user convenience, user priorities. Put whatever you want in there. They could be simplex, okay? They could be DMR, anything you want. Then we went to Chatham and Orange. That's the CO, because Chatham and Orange is kind of one large group, okay? And you can see we've got 12 repeaters, excuse me, we've got 7 repeaters in this particular group here. And we've got, you know, receive frequency, transmit frequency, PL tone, is it analog or digital? And we've got some of the information. And that's that one bullet on the previous slide where it talks about geographic location, or what is the call sign, or whatever that may be. Okay, so these are the 7 repeaters we have in Orange County. Can you go up a little bit? Yeah, that's good right there. Hang on.
So technically, those are the 7 analog repeaters. There are 3 DMR repeaters.
Right. These are the analog repeaters. And one thing you will notice that, see this WUNC A asterisk, A asterisk, A asterisk, A asterisk, down at the bottom of this page. I think it's at the bottom. That's okay. It explains the A asterisk. Those are All-Star linked. Those are the repeaters that are linked through the All-Star repeater network. All right. And that, since analog repeaters are not going to really be growing that much, there's some frequency contention issues, and there's already a lot of them around. And DMR really is the type of repeater communication methodology for the future. We left 3 expansion space for future analog repeaters. So if we do happen to add another one, okay, you don't have to move these all around. And there was the opinion of the team that 3 would be plenty. Okay, go down some more. Okay, now we just moved into Durham. You'll notice these repeaters all have the same call sign, WR4AGC. That's another way to spell Charlie. Always good coverage. Okay, that'll work. I like that. But you can see, okay, you can see that this is, you know, these are in frequency order, kind of because that's the way I sorted the spreadsheet, and then we just grabbed these and I pasted them in there. So the intention was not necessarily that they would be that way, but it's great that they worked out that way. Okay, so you can also count up that way. But again, for Durham, we've got 16, 17. That's supposed to be 18, I think it is. 19 and 20, and then we've got 3 for expansion. Okay, go down some more. Okay, special function or other counties. And we call these either regional or weather, because there's not really a single county. There's multiple counties we have in here and or their special use. So we can, you can see this, here's one in Guilford County, Carthage Moore, where are we here? Burlington. Okay, so these are in various different places around the area, and they could be used for different things. And again, here's the weather, it's not a repeater, but it's a very useful frequency to have in your radio. And again, because this is multiple county and special use, we left 5 locations here because there's a chance that there's more that may come up in the other counties. Okay. Oh, JR's got a question? Okay. Go ahead, JR.
Well, I was just gonna mention, because some people may not be getting it. I saw you had on there Skywarn in the other list. Skywarn has been utilizing for some time now until things get improved on the 8.8. They've been using the 145-210 repeater. So I just wanted to pass that information on to you, and I'll have to look up what that PL tone is for that.
JR,
and give
JR,
yes. Mhm.
look at row 25, 145210,
Right,
K4ITL Skywarn primary.
right. Yeah, I just
So
want
that's
to
in
be
here, and when and if 8.8 comes back online, here is the
Right.
14688. Okay, Skywarn will move back here when it's operational.
all right.
So, good
I'll
thought.
stand corrected. I wanted to be sure. Everything was in there good.
Yeah, that is great. I mean, if anybody I think I lost my audio here. If anybody else has any comments and questions like that, please bring it up, because we tried to think of everything, but that doesn't mean we did. So JR, thank you. Oh, Paul.
There's more than one weather channel. In fact, there's 7. One of the ones is 5.5, another one is 162.5. That might be useful to put in there too.
Okay. If I hope everybody heard Paul said there's more than one weather channel, 5.5 and 5. Lori, can you go back to that shared? Okay, great. Up, a little too far. So we've got 162.550. Paul saying 162.500, correct? Yeah, I know there's a bunch of them. I don't know what their coverage is. I know from my house, that's the only one I can hear. Right, but how many can you hear?
I can also hear 4.5. This is JR. I can also hear 4.5.
Okay. All right, we will. Well, this is recorded, so that's an action item. We'll take that into consideration. Right, 5.5 is for, but does 5.5? Well, that's what I was going to ask. Is 5.5, when you say 5.5 is for our area, how big is our area? Right, but I mean, that says it definitely covers Chatham, Durham, and Orange.
You go to the NOAA website, they'll show you on a map where the towers are and what frequencies are, and this is a pretty wide area for 5.5.
So put down, and if you would, an action item for me to go get that map. Depending on what format it's in, I will send it out to the 2 distributions. Okay, OCRA DFMA Groups IO, and Dan will send it out to the email address so we can look at that, and the group will consider, do we need to add another 1 or 2 or whatever. But again, it's the primary use of this is the 3 counties, and then some spillover into the other adjoining counties should we be able to do that. So that is a good comment. Again, thank you. Okay, moving down. Okay, simplex. There's how many simplex frequencies are there? Well, we don't have time to talk about it. Okay, but these are the major simplex frequencies that our team came up with. Of course, 14652, 14658. Okay, and you can just go down Oxcom backup, 446 national 70 meter, 446 100. Okay, so these are the 5 that we looked at as the primary use simplex that would be used in the event of an emergency, again, within our primary area that we're looking at. Okay, if that goes beyond that, maybe there's more. We've only allowed for 3 more analog simplex. You'll see there's a difference shortly. Okay, 3 more analog simplex. But again, those are the 5 for our primary focus coverage areas. And I said there are more simplex. These are the DMR simplex. Now, I am not exactly what you would call a DMR expert. I know how to spell the 3 letters. All right. I do not have a DMR radio, but we'll talk about that in the next presentation, a lot more detail. But these, again, these are the 6 primary DMR simplex frequencies. And again, with room for expansion.
Hello.
Charles, go ahead.
Yeah, I need to check it, but I don't think that talk group is right. I think a standard talk group for a simplex radio and DMR is like talk group 99 or something like that. I'll look it up and get back with you on that, okay?
I think you mean
For our-
time slot, maybe time slot.
For
No.
our purposes, color code 1, time slot 1, talk group 1 are what we're using as standard. It's certainly within Chatham County.
Yeah, but I think if you take a look at the Sierra frequency allocations and something, just think that, well, I don't know if I don't think there'll be any conflict, but I know the standard is you use talk group 99 for any kind of simplex channel, but I don't see why with talk group 1. You gotta be careful though, because your PRN's on talk group 1. So I don't know.
Okay, moving from simplex, DMR simplex frequencies to DMR repeaters. Okay, this is a sub list. Excuse me while I'm drinking some water. This is not meant to be complete. I would not use this list right now to program your radios. And we'll explain that when we get to the next presentation. Well, I'll explain it now, actually. Okay, so I talked about the IC 217 form earlier, about the superset list for all of the frequencies that would be used to be transferred into the 205. Can you, oh, that won't be on this one. Yeah, is there a, look in the, see if there's an IC 217 in the folder. I know there's one in the presentation, but it'll be another eye test. Okay. Yeah, go ahead. So Lori's going to switch from the PDF of the frequency chart over to a different PDF of an IC 217. And I'll talk about what's going on right now. So Mike is in the process of creating an IC 217 form using our frequency standard chart, okay, and incorporating into that a greatly expanded DMR inventory list. And I say greatly expanded. We had like 5 or 6 line items in our frequency chart. I would guess you've got probably 20 or 25 line items. It's a lot anyway. Okay. And one thing you'll know when we go back to the other chart, there's a reason why we put the PRN, the DMR repeaters at the end, because as I said earlier, those are the repeaters that will be expanding. The high probability that those frequencies and those repeaters will be expanding. That's why we put it at the bottom. So when you get more than 3, 4, or 5, okay, it's not going to screw up the memory locations. As long as you go by the IC 217 form that Mike is making, which I will then take that information, a subset of that information, as much as I can, because a lot of it's required when you start to get to the plugs and stuff that I don't understand, okay? But he's putting together this is the 217, yeah. He's putting together this particular form, which has the number, the configuration, the name, I'm not sure what eligible.
That's usually either amateur or, for us, it's amateur.
Amateur commercial, always be amateur. All right, so the receive frequency, whether it's narrow or wideband, receive tone, transmit tone, is it analog, digital, or mixed? And there's a description over on the right-hand side that really starts to talk about it. And this will be, and almost is, totally populated in the 217 that Mike's putting together. I didn't want to show that tonight because it's not done. That's one of those forms that our customer uses. All right. So when it gets finished from the ham radio perspective, then it has to get reviewed by the Chatham group because they're really the users of that. And then it'll go to the EOC and that whole group will look at it and they'll say, yep, this is right. This is blessed. And then it can become public rather than send out all of the iterations and make things wrong and have you program your radios and then they'll change. No, we don't want to do that. We're asking you to do this, but we're trying to have you do it once. So with the exception of DMR, which is by design, the bottom of this list, the list, the way it stands, can be used right now. Okay. So you can go back to the presentation. Sorry. Hi, Charles. You're spotlighted. Okay, and there's the DMR. Okay, next steps. So review and update the list with all of the data elements, and that's really the PRN part. The rest of them are complete. We'll take a look at the weather channels, okay, and see what that looks like. Okay, we do have the Skywarn stuff to JR's point, but we'll take a look at that. So review and update the list with all the data elements. So even if we add 1 or 2 weather channels, we still have room in the chart now to add that without doing any reformat of the chart or adding in frequencies. Okay, review with Chatham EOC and surrounding county reps for ability to utilize. Well, we don't have surrounding county reps from a customer perspective, okay, but we do have surrounding county reps. Jose is on the Zoom call tonight, okay, from Guilford County. All right, so we would, since we share resources, Dwayne Eyre from Alamance County, I was going to say Mebane, but that's where he lives, from Alamance County, okay, is another resource that where he uses us, we use him, very active in the Oxcom group, okay? So we want to make sure that they understand what we're trying to do and give them that ability to use it. Communicate to OCRA and DFMA membership. Well, I'm kind of doing it to a little bit of both tonight, but we'll be more than happy to come to the DFMA meeting and do this again, or they can look at the presentation, the YouTube, okay, whichever works. Suggest a date to have programming completed. So should we try to do this as a group? Should we try to get together here like we did when we built that Fox Hunt radio? We'll get together for, well, if we're programming radios, we probably need a month, but we'll try to do it in a few hours, okay, on maybe a Saturday sometime, and we can bring our devices here. Some of them, some of us can't take them out of their cars. I've got one in Lori's car and one in my car, which are not too portable, but I also have one at home. We have an HT that we could bring in, bring in a few power supplies, bring in a few antennas, and just have a group session where we can all program them. Chances are we've got quite a few of similar radios, so we'll have the similar problem or solution to get them programmed. Maybe some people have the memory cable to go to the computer so we can actually load the computer and download it. But if that's something that seems like a good activity, well, let's talk about that. Let's schedule a date and we'll try to make that happen. Okay. And then next steps, after we get this thing rolling, then we can use the Saturday OCRA net for testing. Okay. We've done that before where we'd say, okay, let's, 442.150 went off the air. We had this little power failure situation. Okay. So we used one of Charlie's repeaters for a couple of weeks until that came back on the air. All right. Well, we can do that with this. And once we get the frequencies in our devices, then we can kind of sort of do what Wilson was saying about simplex, but we can say, well, can everybody hit 442.075? Well, that's the new repeater that we, the club, authorized Dan and the repeater team to purchase to get built and to get put on the air as a warm spare. It is done. It is on the air. Hopefully some of you have tried that. Okay. And I've got that in at least 3 of my 4 radios. Okay. And it's got pretty good coverage, but we could say move to 442F75 or go from location, I don't know what they are, 11 to 7. Okay, because you've got it in your device now and you can just turn your memory knob from 11 to 7 and everybody can go there and find out if it works. Or go to 3 and now we can talk to, no, 3's in the user area, go to 10. Okay, and well, 442075 is part of the All-Star network, which is linked to the repeaters in Chatham County. So now we can have the Chatham guys on with us also. So this would be a great exercise to do something more than testing our push to talk buttons on Saturday morning for the net. Yeah, I can go. Yeah, that next one's 205. Okay, go back to the 205 for a second. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on here, but this is the second form, which would be incident specific. So data would come from the 207 that Lori brought up for us on PDF, and it would get pasted in here to the 205. And this pretty much talks about what the incident is, what the communications plan would be for that incident, have all of the repeaters listed that would be used, and it would be taken from our master sheet, which turns into the 217, which goes to the 205. So it's, you know, it could be a bit of work to get us all in the same order, but the benefit would be, I think, outstanding. And let me walk, who fills what out? Oh, Carmel, hang on.
So it depends on the incident, but it's often filled out by who's ever providing the entire ICS plan for an incident. But it will commonly done with either Oxcom or with the ComL.
I'd like to make a comment on that. I've haven't retaken the ICS courses, so I don't have the qualifications to go to state OEOC, but I have participated in some exercises down in Chatham County. They've got 2 concerns. One of them's a nuclear power plant down there. They also got a very large lake that people drown in. So that's one of the things that sometimes they hopefully will never need to help them with the first thing I mentioned. But once you go to one of these exercises and you see these forms filled out, it tells you, it gives you kind of a big picture. So you're not walking in blind. And one of the comments that Steve Newton made that when he went into Puerto Rico, when one of the hurricanes came out, it was absolute chaos. What this documentation is doing is at least trying to have you, when you walk into a situation that's totally chaotic, you at least got some sense of who can you talk to if you got this problem. It gives you just a little bit of a skeleton plan. And once you've participated in these exercises, I would feel naked even going down to participate in one of their exercises if I hadn't gotten that documentation up front. I sort of know what I'm walking into. That's the key thing that ICS is all about. We've just had another reminder of how critical that is of a very chaotic situation. It's not perfect. The plan will always change, but you're not going in with absolutely no structure at all to try to deal with a very difficult situation.
And let me just add something to what Dan said. And is, if you have taken the time to program your devices according to our released sheet now, which came out to at least 2 distribution lists, the information over here in this form will be the memory location of the repeater or the simplex frequency that would have been pulled from our form to populate the 217 that Mike's putting together, and then from the 217 to the 205, and then from that 205 to be used in the incident. So you would not only feel ready, you would be ready because your devices would be programmed the same way. And you'd know they're working, they're tested because you've already done that. Okay, next page. Any additional questions or comments before we move on to the next part? This has been good. I appreciate the questions, and, you know, no question is, you know, too stupid.
Yeah, I got a question, guys, or comment. You might want to program in the, non-federal interops frequencies like the UTACs and the VTAC, channels. Because I guarantee, if it gets really bad enough, we'll get permission to operate on those channels, on those frequencies, and that's in the NIFOG book.
Okay, so I asked a opinion of an authority here in the room, Charles. I asked Mike. Okay, and if you think about one of the criteria that we had up front was we wanted to make this list be able to be utilized with some of the legacy equipment. And Mike's response was two things. One, the new Anytone radios, which are DMR radios, can be programmed for those particular frequencies if you change the mode of that they operate in. But that's something that
excuse me. Oops.
Yep, and that's something that we would also need authorization to do before we could do it. So that would be something that we would add to the list if given approval, but it would have to be added in such a way that we know that me, for example, who does not have one of those radios, would not be able to do it. So go back to one of the criteria, make this list usable by the majority.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Excuse me for bringing that up, because as soon as you said that, I thought, uh-oh. I've done nothing but mud the water, but
no, that's fine. I'm glad you brought it up. We got another question in the room.
I'd like to come back on JR's comment, and that is if you've got other weather stations, et cetera, that's a good use for the first 4 or 5 lines of this plan.
He'll get back to you after I ask my question. So I just had a comment. So when you're filling in the repeaters on your radio, sometimes it helps, for me anyway, for some radios, to put the number in the actual description, because on one of my radios in particular, I don't know what channel, what index I'm on. So I could be on, like, I don't know, 13 or 14. But I know because the display will show the actual index tying it back to you. So that might help some people.
Okay, so let me first of all, Fred, I think that's a good idea, because people have the first 5 that can be used as they wish. And if there's a variable for a weather station in County X or County Y, maybe that goes in one of the first 5. Where for me, I would always be on the weather channel that's on here, the 162.550. Sam's point about making the description which would normally be in the frequency readout section. Is that correct, Fred? Sam? Okay. So there was a conversation early on about, should we have the frequencies in there? Should we have an alphanumeric representation of the repeater? So it might say, WUNC high tower, or however many letters you've got. Okay. When you see the 217 form that Mike's putting together, it has a long and a short description in alpha characters. I don't think there's any numeric, but I think it's all alpha. Maybe there's numeric, but I mean alphanumeric, which could get you there. But again, if in your memory location 16, or let's use 7, which I think is for 11 rather, 442.150, in location 11, as long as you have 442.150, whatever is convenient for you in that area would be acceptable, as long as 11 is 442.150. Somebody else might have a real problem using your radio. Okay, if you say, well, here, take mine, yours is broken, take mine and go do whatever you need to do, they might not be, cross-user friendly. So that's another consideration, I would think. But, what we're trying to get is the order with the frequencies, and then the order with the simplex. Good questions. Wilson.
Me again. A little background on All-Star. As I recall, it was Lincoln analog repeaters. Oh. And it uses internet, right? So maybe we should think about when the internet isn't there also. Okay. There was one more. Is it conceivable that we could all use the same PL?
I'm going to hand that to Dan. No, because then I have to change every one of my.
One of the things to coordinate a repeater, first of all, any repeater frequency that we have, somebody else is using that same frequency some distance away. And that's what Sarah does, is try to locate those repeaters where they're, when you get a coordination, it's far enough away that you're not going to be interfering with each other. But under a lot of conditions, you're going to be hearing that other repeater. So Sarah has a requirement that you put a PL on your repeater, at least where it's not keying off of someone far away, and those PL frequencies need to be different. In other words, think of the geography. You don't want two repeaters on the same frequency on the same PL that could possibly be hearing each other. That's to avoid interference.
To that point, and maybe you haven't, well, yeah, I know you hear it because you can hear 442.150. How many of you heard the other repeater coming in on 442.150 occasionally? I mean, where's that? Burlington or someplace? This was 2 weeks ago.
Being on the tower, we've heard signals come in under certain ducting conditions up in Pennsylvania coming down and keying 150. We've heard it on the 6-meter machine. So, but the good news about tall tower repeaters is you get a long range of coverage. The bad news is it hears a lot of distant signals and they can interfere, and especially during certain propagation conditions. We hear the 145.230 repeater up on the mountain west of Charlotte on the same frequency that we got the Chatham repeater, but it's a different PL. So you don't have people keying each other's repeaters and causing even more confusion.
Chip's got a question. Let me get around the back. Then we got to move on to the next presentation. Well, wait a minute, so everybody can hear it. Notice I'm trying to do this. All you future presenters, please walk to the person talking with the microphone.
Yes, good afternoon. I've been able to key up the 442.150 repeater from Dalton Park in the Smokies, and that is quite a distance away, and hit it on 2.5 watts.
It's a good repeater. Let's hope it lasts a long time because it's an expensive repeater to fix. Okay, next slide, Lori. Part 2 is answer Wilson's question about All-Star. Repeater linking, policies and procedures. Not a lot of policies and procedures yet. We'll get to that. So let me just make this statement. The linking of the repeaters right now is still in design, pretty much done with that. It's in implementation, pretty much done with that. It's really being tested, okay? Go ahead, okay. I'll stay there, that's good. You'll see that there's 4 repeaters that have been linked. Right now there are 3 linked, and we can talk about the 4th one and why it's not right now. But we'll get into this. So here's the agenda. Why do we want to link repeaters? Why do we want to steer repeaters? Well, I had a different definition of steering than what the real definition is. So make up some definitions of steering, and then I'll tell you what it really is. What repeaters can be linked today and in the future? How are repeaters linked, current and future? This is the internet question. The process to request linking. Who can perform the linking process? What are the next steps? And then we'll talk a little bit about DMR repeaters. Okay, next slide. Why link repeaters? So linking would be implemented to address the geographic communication needs of emergencies or public service requests. It's pretty logical, really. You'll see a map farther down in this presentation that is one that Dan sent to a requester that is going to have a bicycle relay activity, over the river and through the woods, okay? And the suggestion was made, well, why don't you use these linked repeaters? Dan put them on a map and sent them out, and I believe they did use that, correct? Okay, so, if they can be used in emergencies by our main customer, okay, right now, Chatham, okay? They can be used public service, like the bicycle activities, to generate a larger area of coverage. They can be used for nets. Chatham, I keep using Chatham as an example because they're leading this surge of activity for us. Where their members live, they all cannot hit the same repeater. Maybe some can, but not all of them. But by putting the repeaters in various geographic areas, thanks to Steve making those areas and towers and coax and installation crew and who knows what else available, they're there, and the internet, by the way, they now are able to have their club nets on the linked repeaters. We can use them for training, okay, which is the same kind of thing we talked about before. And day-to-day reliability. Well, if one repeater goes off, almost so what, okay, because we still have 3 more on. Hopefully somebody that lives close to the one that went off the air can still hit one of the other ones. So it's kind of redundancy. Okay, steering. Linking of all-star ready repeaters to a different hub. The steering could be anywhere within all-star ready infrastructure. So let me try to give an example, and then I'll walk over here and hand the mic to Mike if I'm wrong. Okay. If you have an all-star ready repeater here in Orange County, and you have one in Chatham, and you have one in Alamance, okay, you could essentially link those repeaters by someone that has the privileges and an appropriate hub, and it would cover a geographic line from Durham through Orange or Chatham over into Alamance, okay, and essentially you would steer the signals along that line. You could also have the hub in some other state, and they could link to that repeater. If you needed to have somebody in Chatham County talking to somebody in, pick your favorite state, Tennessee, Pennsylvania, okay, you could link all-star ready repeaters through the internet, through the hub, to those repeaters. How much did I lie about?
It's not just within the states, it's anywhere that there's an internet connection. I was in Sicily the first 2 weeks in September, and I have an app on my phone that I can link to a hub, and I was able to communicate from Sicily to Chatham through the All-Star.
Back in July 11th, our club meeting in 2022, we had a discussion about the future of the 442150 repeater. And can we afford to continue keeping that repeater on the air? It is getting incredibly expensive in terms of tower crews. So I don't want to go through that entire discussion, but we've also looked around to try to find, are there any, particularly for Orange County, are there more towers available that we could put a repeater on to kind of start providing coverage if that repeater went off the air and basically we had to abandon it because we can't afford to fix it? What's going to be our plan B? We haven't had a plan B until the idea of taking, and this is what Charlie has been doing for decades in Durham County, is change from a high tower implementation to a lower tower where the equipment can be actually on the ground, where you can drive up to it and get the place unlocked and go in there and fix whatever problem you got. We can't do that anymore on the tall tower. So this linking is a way, if we lose 150, we've got a plan B that we can go to. And part of rolling all this out is obviously building the system and then kind of getting the word out. How are you going to use it? To make a long and short of it, once it's up and running, if you've got the linked repeaters programming your radio, you simply turn the knob till you hear the best signal and you talk on that and you'll be heard on all the other repeaters. That's the short answer.
Thanks, Dan. Jose has a question. Jose, go ahead with your question.
As a quick comment when it comes to steering, this is the same story. The big example that happened was right now, western part of the mountains. With the Viper system, we couldn't get anywhere local. So we had to basically use Tennessee, Virginia, all these locations that have a tower near the area to steer the Viper signal to that, start using those towers to get that local reception. So basically that's what you do with their hubs.
Thanks, Jose. JR, I think, has a question too.
Well, mine was basically a comment. I don't know if people are familiar with K4JDR. He's the guy that's responsible and set up the Carolina 440 link system. And he might be that group might be one to check with this, see about the problems and trouble with trying to link that, because he is linked a lot going all the way from the coast on repeaters coming all the way up this way, except he didn't have a tile. He didn't have tile system that was near the mountains. You to go there, that's still something to be negotiated. But he already has that system working, and I know for the Durham area, it is the 444-925 part that allows us here in Durham to get onto that, and that lets us go either to the coast, speak to someone, or we can go west as far as it will go. But just a possibility of a suggestion that might that Carolina 440 link
JR?
might be a good group to talk with.
JR, just a comment. Dan and Mike were saying, we've already been in contact with those guys. So they're not trying to reinvent the solution. They're actually using the expertise from the North Carolina group. Because again, this may be a 3-county solution, but we want to make sure it's implementable statewide. And Jose just talked about the next bullet somewhat for the follow the sun capability. Move your hub to someplace where you can have one. Maybe it's in Italy with Mike or wherever he is, or it can be in Tennessee for the Viper. And in most cases, this would be for a short-term implementation. Hopefully the situation in Western North Carolina doesn't last for a real long time, and they can get their own network back up and on the air. Okay, but this would be a short-term solution. Okay, what repeaters can be linked? And if you look at the chart that you all printed out, you'll see that in the top part of that chart, in the section CO for Chatham Orange, these 4 repeaters, Northeast Park, Moncure Fire Station, Gibbs Lane, and Siler City, all have an A asterisk in the comments part of the row. And those are the 4 repeaters that can be linked. Right now, 14523 is not linked, and it's a short-term problem, but it's also believed to be the cause of Western North Carolina issue, because the folks from the EOC that have access to that building that could get us in there to fix it have been dispatched, and they're still out in Western North Carolina. So we have 3 of them up. So we still have 3 of the 4 linking. Those 3 still working fine, but 14523 fell out of that, potentially because of a network issue or something like that locally within the room, but we can't get in the room because it's secured until they get back. Analog repeaters, 442150, currently under discussion for a way to do that. And that's above my pay grade, but hang in there until the solution comes out, and we'll see potential ways to do that. And also Durham, there are discussions going on, because again, Charlie has been part of all of these meetings, and you can't spell Durham repeaters without putting Charlie's name in there. Okay. He's shaking his head no, but he's never going to get out of it. So that discussions are currently going on, and he has had some repeaters linked, not through All-Star, through RF in the past. And that has been, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but not completely reliable, if I can state that, or at least as reliable as you would prefer. It's been better. Okay, RF has been more reliable than the internet in his location. So, okay, next page. Okay, here's the cloud, folks. This is my attempt at showing you what we're looking at. So right now, for test and development, our hub has been at Ted Ogden's house, okay? And Ted is one of the folks that was at these meetings when we're talking about linking, and he's been part of the design, implementation, test and development, and ongoing tuning. Okay, so it's convenient to have the hub living with someone that is involved in that, so you don't have to drive to the hub. And then through the internet, provided by Steve from Chatham EOC, we've got Moncure, Northeast Park, Gibbs Lane, and Siler City, except Northeast Park, as I just said, is kind of fallen off. All right, and what we're going to do in the future? Well, the Chatham EOC will be a hub location. they have two, and I'm going to put words in Mike's mouth here. I believe they're two different network connections coming into the Chatham EOC that gives them a redundant connectivity. Well, when I hear, but when I see there's seven, but I'm a data center design guy. They're from multiple vendors coming in from multiple directions through different conduit, through, everything is diverse and, just the internet. Yeah. Okay, let's shorten this. So they've got microwave at the Chatham EOC that can point to these locations, and at the internet, and then that does, well, how does it help us? Yeah, what I want to get into is reality today. I don't want, we'll get there sometime. So this is where we are today. We've got one hub. Actually, we've got three. I think Dan has the capability for a hub. Mike has the capability for a hub. Chatham will soon have the capability for a hub. Next page. Okay. Process for linking when it's in production. Okay. Let me jump. Well, it's on the next page. Okay. Justifications should fall within one of the accepted categories that we had on the earlier part of this presentation, whether it's emergency, public service, a net, testing, training. Okay. Requester would have to send a request to a distribution list. Well, that distribution list, the way I'm envisioning it, it has to be somebody with a hub. Okay. And it would have to be somebody on the short list of people that can say, yes, that's a valid reason to link the repeater. The email must contain information about why. What's the duration? Which repeaters do you need? It could be very similar to the bike ride. I've got a bike ride scheduled for Saturday. This is where the bike ride is. It would be really great if we could do this, and that essentially covers it, okay? Then it would need approval and time to implement. Now, and linking and possibly steering would be performed by one of the control operators. And the control operators right now, we're looking at 4, I believe. We're looking at Mike, Dan, Ed, and Ted, right? Oh, Mike, Dan, John, and Ted. Okay, next page. Okay, so how are they linked? Current, during design, test, and tuning, repeaters will remain linked. Single hub at Ted's QTH right now in Sanford, other hubs for test, alternate hub at John's QTH in Pittsburgh. Future, multiple hubs, as I showed on the picture. Question, unlinked day-to-day. Well, that is a big question because really, based on the utilization and the day-to-day coverage requirements, it might be better to leave the 4 in this, well, 3 in the southern tier with the 1 in Orange County linked to guarantee we have coverage. Because if we can't, if everybody in Chatham and folks that want to use them in Orange cannot talk to each other on these 4 primary repeaters if they're unlinked, you don't want to have to link them every time. Hey, we're going to have a net. Well, let's link them. Hey, we're going to do an exercise. Let's link them. If there's not the utilization on those repeaters individually, why unlink them? So that's up for discussion, potentially, but Steve at the EOC would prefer to leave them linked so they'd be ready should he need them. But so that needs to be evaluated. And really, right now, it's probably the best solution. Next page. Okay. Control ops currently limited to 4 people, Ted, John, Mike, and Dan, and future based on service commitment and desired response time. So what I mean by that is if you get a request in, and 3 of the 4 are on vacation and the 4th one's out for the night, well, you just missed your service level agreement and you can't do the, so that's why right now it'd probably be good to leave them linked. But, and that's also why I said there's no policies and procedures here yet. It's got to get working first and make sure it's easy to link, unlink, all the bells and whistles are tuned up and everybody understands exactly how it is. But there needs to be a level of service to meet our customer needs. And if it meets our customer needs, it'll certainly meet our. Okay. Next steps, completion of the implementation phase to become production ready, creation of these policies and procedures, updated presentation at some point, integration of additional repeaters, okay, which 147.225 and 443.275 are currently RF-linked. The 220 repeater is linked through the morning brew. And the WNC tower, not sure how yet, but it's being discussed. And then the training that we already talked about. Next page. And here's that map I was telling you about. This was the map that Dan put together, and this was the area where the bike exercise was. And for those of you that are on Zoom, I'm pointing at the slide now, so you can't see me doing that, but hopefully you'll see that in front of you. And you can see the four black areas where the repeaters are. This one, the top one is the WUNC tower, that's 442150. And the other three are three of the linked repeaters in Chatham County. And based on the location of where the bike race is, the 442075, the fourth repeater in this link, in the current link network, is way northeast off this map. Okay, but the bike race, their bike exercise was in the south. So those three would have covered them. And the next slide is one that Steve made up. And sorry, I can't really get it any bigger to get it on this page, but this was a slide that he wanted to use just to see what kind of overlap he had with the repeaters that are linked. And this is not a scientific linkage based on height of antenna, how many watts, sensitivity of the repeater. Each one of those green circles is a 10-mile radius. So I said to Steve, how did you get this? How do you know this is the coverage? He says, it's 10 miles. Okay, so it's a reasonable representation that he wanted to use, I think, to have a discussion. So he sent me the slide, so I kind of stole it from him. Okay, next slide. Uh-oh. DMR repeaters. Let me start off with this question. How many of you in the room or on Zoom actually have a DMR radio?
I do.
So we have at least two. We have at least two on the Zoom, because I think Jose does and Charles does.
Yep.
Yep.
Ah, Bob, I forgot Bob.
I do too.
Yep. Okay, so we have four on the line, and we got five in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so we've got 10 out of 20 some people. That's more than I thought. That's more than 50%. I'm really surprised, pleasantly surprised. So DMR, it's an emerging technology, which it's only an emerging technology because it's not being adapted very quickly. That's my opinion. Okay, because how many people here have analog radios? All the hands go up because they've had them for a long time. So to get a DMR radio, you have to go spend some money. All right. So if you can buy an HT for somewhere around $110 used or $250 new, or if you want a higher power mobile radio, you're looking at $300 to $400. So we're not talking a lot of money, but if you have something else you want to buy and it's $300 or $400, and you have an analog radio, well, maybe you're okay with the analog radio and you don't buy the DMR. So I'm just saying there are some potential obstacles for growing this as fast as maybe the analog is grown. Okay, in the middle, the DMR repeaters are being transitioned to the NC North Carolina, South Carolina PRN network. PRN is a wide area digital amateur radio network, and it actually stands for Pro Re Nada. Is that what it is? I can't even read this, but what that is, get rid of the Latin, and it's as the situation demands. When we were in the meeting, we asked, what does PRN stand for? And nobody knew. So I just looked it up on the internet. But I like that, as the situation demands. I mean, that's kind of, pretty decent. Well, he didn't look at the internet. The internet doesn't lie. We use it to connect these things. Next slide. Okay, so, and this could be old because I believe that another DMR radio was installed. Currently, there are 3 DMR repeaters in the Tri-County area, Northeast Park, Goldston, and Hillsborough. This is the one you guys just installed there, or is that a 4th? Did you just? Oh, but okay, so this is the one that you guys were working on when the 230 went off. Oh, okay, because you were working on one when 230 went off the air, right? Okay. Future, Raleigh, more Raleigh, Cary, who knows? But there'll be more DMR repeaters that will be coming online. Next page. Oh, okay, that was short. It was short because I'm not a DMR expert. If you have DMR experts, we have folks in the room that can answer any DMR question you have. So if you have DMR questions, that's why I wanted to get through this as quickly as I could. It's like 8:45 or something like that. Is that what it is? 8:48. Okay, so we've got about 10 minutes left. And if there are any DMR questions or any questions about the linking, please ask them, because I'm the operations guy. I'm not the engineer, design, implementation guy. So I have one comment. If you before everybody leaves, make sure the water is unplugged and dumped, and all of the cups you used are washed and taken care of. Charles has a question.
Oh, well, not really. I had a comment though. I'm really impressed with the amount of work you guys and the quality of the product that I'm seeing. I mean, it's obvious that you guys put a lot of work into this darn thing, and you're doing it right. And I really wish I could. It really breaks my heart. I can't help you guys with it, but it is what it is. As far as the DMR goes, I'll answer any questions anybody has. I think it's a good technology because if you get the right radio, it'll roam between all these different, you don't even have to change the buttons. But I'll set mine in PRN, and I can roam from tower to tower from one end of the state to the next and never touch a knob.
You have anything? Either you guys use PRN or DMR? I don't. Any in-room? Carly has comments.
Basically, the system is the North Carolina system and the South Carolina system, and in North Carolina there's a little over 60 repeaters, and a DMR repeater is digital and it has 2 time slots. One of those is the PRN network. So when you key your radio on the PRN time slot, you're keying up 60 plus repeaters. It's kind of like 5.2 on steroids, maybe. So if you find someone that you want to talk to somewhere, then you can go to the other time slot and do chat 1 or chat 2, which basically brings up only the 2 repeaters that you're using instead of tying up 60 plus. Or if you want to talk to someone across town, you can do local, and it's just that 1 repeater. But our discussion of linking up and all those things, the PRN network is always there. South Carolina has a similar system. They are somewhat blessed in that they're all linked up over public television's microwave system all over the entire state. So they don't depend on the internet. They have a much better connection, but we don't have that. But it's there, and it's certainly available. If we had an emergency and folks in Chatham had a question for somebody in Charlotte or Asheville or Wilmington, it's there, and it's instant. So it's has some real capabilities as a backup system.
It is a great system because I've literally stood on Atlantic Beach, North Carolina, and talked to somebody all the way on the other end of the state using a 2.5 watt handheld radio.
Is the hub on UPS, and what keeps the repeaters from linking to each other?
Every Chatham Tower site, first of all, it's got a generator. It's got 2 completely different UPS systems within the hardened building. The power distribution inside the building is fully redundant. A lot of the equipment, just like server farms, have AC cords that can plug into 2 totally independent power sources, where if one goes down, the second one carries the load. We're on that same system. The comment I tried to make a little bit earlier ago, these sites also are Viper sites. They do use extensive microwave relay linking to tie the Viper system. So what I was kind of alluding to, if a crisis really happened, and we need to get one of these repeaters on a microwave link to communicate. Probably EOC IT could go on that site and do that. Now, that's not a plan. I'm just telling you a little bit about a lot of the things we've talked about here, where it's PRN, us linking repeaters. It's kind of following the statewide Viper model in terms of how you manage it and how you use it.
Yeah, so the hub, there will be a hub, at least a hub, located at the Chatham EOC, which defaults to the power that Dan talked about. Dan's hub is on UPS. His whole house is on UPS. I don't know about Mike and Ted.
Again, this has been a development project over a fairly short period of time. Just to drop, Ted is a soon to be retired Army communications specialist. We have learned so much from him about how to do this and how to tie these systems together securely. So think of the hub we're using right now at his house. That is a development system. The plan will be to put a fully redundant hub system inside the EOC where it's powered by all the double redundant systems that we've talked about.
The hub you're referring to is the All-Star system, not the DMR system. So the DMR system, as Charlie mentioned, there's one that's linked continuously. That's the PRN on time slot 2. Then the other is the on demand. That's chat 1 and chat 2, which you can bring up and link with someone that you may want to talk to. But the other hub, the All-Star hub, that is for linking analog repeaters, not digital.
So let me go back to that other picture. Don't go back there, but visualize the picture with the clouds. Okay. So there were 4 hubs in there. As I said earlier, this is not yet in production. As Dan said, this is test and development. It's at Ted's house for the convenience of Ted, who's one of the test and development people. Okay. There are a plan, okay, to have more hubs. Dan will have one. Mike has one, I believe. Okay. And the EOC will have one. So let's just say, for example, Ted's house goes down. Well, Dan can bring it up. Okay. There's a request to bring up the All-Star network. Dan's on UPS. He's got a cellar full of batteries, okay, that runs the whole house. So Dan won't go down usually, but if Dan goes down, there's Mike. And if Mike and Dan and Ted are down, well, there's the EOC where it might have been anyway on the redundant power generators, dual UPSs, et cetera. So don't think of this in production yet, but once it is, I think the answer to your question will be yes. 3 letters. Any other question? Anybody but Sam. Here you go, Sam.
But I used to use the DMR repeater in Cary. I don't know if it's still there, but oh, it is. Okay.
Okay. Since nobody has any questions, I have one more thing I'd like to bring up tonight. We have one more meeting before Christmas for December, and that's our Christmas party. And you already heard from Boyd about that. We also have this annual thing that we have to all get involved in called elections. Okay. Right now, with the exception of one person, and that's Bob, who's on Zoom tonight, W4FK, he's the only board of directors person whose term does not expire this year. So we have the opportunity for more people, should they want to get involved in the leadership team of this club. And I would encourage you to please get involved because we actually do have fun. We do a lot of good stuff. Send me an email. Send one of the other people on the leadership team an email. Wave the flag. Yeah, I would like to get involved, and I'd like to get involved in this position. If you don't know what the positions are, send me the email, and I'll send you back the job descriptions of president, vice president, treasurer. I think we got somebody that wants to run for treasurer back there, but okay. Secretary, board of directors. Okay. We have all of those job descriptions that we did 3 years ago, right after the new leadership team got put in place. So we would be able to do this. Okay. We would really like to get some more folks coming forward and relieve some of us that have been in these positions for 20 years or more. We lost one person, D, KU4GC, who you all know is in the process of moving from Durham to New Mexico. He said he didn't want to rerun. We told him he could come to the meetings on Zoom, but he thinks he's going to have other stuff to do. So really, think about it. Please come forward. We've got 100 and some members in this club. Chances are we can find 6 to 7 members that would like to run for one of the offices. Anybody else have any comments? Open. Let me turn this back over to the guy running this meeting.
Yeah,
Presentation
I got
is
one
done.
question. I do have a question though. Actually, what are we going to use all these frequencies for? Logistics or anything like that?
The question was, what are we going to use all these frequencies for? Well, let's start off with the fact that every frequency, every analog frequency on that piece of paper that I sent out, the PDF or the Excel spreadsheet, we currently have. Okay. And, you know, if one repeater is down, we use a different one. Well, 442150 was down for 3 weeks, long time. So we used other repeaters for our Saturday nets. Those of you that want to just get on 2 meters or 440 and talk from your vehicles or home, you know, that's why we use them. In Chatham, we use them for the exercises. There's an annual, or maybe it's biannual, jump in the lake activity where they use the repeaters for that. Okay, twice a year. They have test exercises with the nuclear power plant. They have training on weekends that they do to make sure that they know what they have should there be an event, which we would like to start doing here. I know Jose's group in Guilford also does a lot of training and testing, and Jose's been all over the state the last week and a half since the hurricane, lending his services. So, you know, we may not use them often, but it's good to have them there, have them working, tested, should we need them. I know Charlie has done some analysis about percentage of utilization on some of his repeaters, and it's a lot lower than you would think, but they're still used and they're there. Does that help, Charles?
Just curious because, you know, I've been looking at the PRN network, and during this whole you know, the hurricane situation up in the Buncombe County, there's very little traffic coming through that. And, you know, and I'm just curious, you know, what do we foresee them being used for in cases of emergencies? Like if we get another tornado or hurricane come through?
In the current excitement in the mountains, there's been extensive use of ham radio to coordinate different agencies. Dan's been snooping in on them, and I don't know what he's heard, but people have told me that a lot is being done. My son's repeater in Marion, my son's club, has handled lots of health and welfare and some government. And Mount Mitchell has had a lot more.
Yeah.
It's 9 o'clock. We got to start wrapping up here. Dan has a comment he'd like to throw in there, and then we'll just open it up for a 2-second question from anybody, and then we'll close it up.
I'll just say that I've been listening off and on to the Mount Mitchell repeater since this whole thing started. And guess what? It's been up and running through, quote, how am I hearing it? It's through a thing called Broadcastify. Guess what? That's based on using the internet. That's a whole nother story about perceptions about things going down and some things working on the internet. It's not all the same.
Okay. Want me to turn this back to you to close it? No, I'm standing, I got the mic. Boyd has delegated it back to me. All right. So thank you very much for coming tonight. Lori and I will go through this recording, and we will send out the YouTube link for everybody so they can, you know, look at it again. If you have not already printed off the sheet with the memory frequencies, the programming sheet, please do. And think about, you know, would it be a benefit if we got together on some Saturday or whatever and had an exercise where we did that? You know, I think myself that it probably would be, because I think that's a good way to get as many people that show up here to the exercise, at least to get that done, because this is not an easy task. Before you leave, please put your badges on the table so we can collect those. And again, thanks for coming, and we'll see you next month.